Hey there, welcome to another episode of the Coffee Solo audio program. It is 9:57 p.m. Pacific Daylight Time on Saturday, April 11, 2026. I am your host, Dan Hugo, as usual. Coffee Solo program is by design, and it shows up right there in the title. A solo audio program. It has no specific release schedule, has no plans for guests. It's really just me rambling. It's sort of a practice for being less scripted, more spontaneous. I do produce other audio programs through the week. Those tend to be scripted in that I write them. I have a fairly standard format that I follow for all of my other audio programs. Basically an outline, topic, title, right? And then each section has at least 3 supporting items. Usually I keep it to 3, and then I can kind of have some idea of how long the show will be and whether it's complete in my mind and so on. So I basically follow that format for all of my audio programs. Here I will either write some notes or I will jot down a couple of particular specific items perhaps. Today I have not. So today's episode has 4, usually I end with anything else just in case something comes to me during, but today I have 3 bullet items with about a sentence each, no supporting sub-bullets. I did write the summary ahead of time and title the episode because there's something going on. I mean, it's not something big, but it's something I've been noticing more and more lately. So I thought I would touch on it. The title is Perception. I used to have this thing I would tell people, perception is reality. I don't think I came up with that. For example, the painfully obvious version of this, I was working at Philips Electronics, Philips Components actually. Philips Components was the global product division, and then Philips Electronics was the U.S. company. So Philips Components was part of Philips Electronics North America. Anyway, so I worked at Philips Components, the makers of Norelco shavers and a whole number of things with a variety of product names. That was a legacy of World War II, getting out of the Holland/Netherlands proximity to World War II, so they could not be mistaken for a German company. So they introduced all these new names and Norelco, Magnavox, a variety of others. So that was kind of interesting. Anyway, so I was working in a business unit in Philips Components in the flat display systems group. I don't remember what the hierarchy of the org chart was called, but anyway, so the main person, Matt Medeiros, was located in the United States. So Philips Components basically moved from Netherlands to Silicon Valley. I'm sure they thought that would be a good idea. And then they formed our business unit as part of the flat display systems push because LCDs were becoming a big thing. I'm only telling you this for just, a little bit of background on my Philips experience. But anyway, the general manager of our group was somebody I had known. He hired me out of college. And so this many years later, it was about 6 years later, I think, he was given the business unit to form. So software and electronics business unit to add value to flat displays. So to basically build OEMable products around flat displays. If you remember the first LCD television to enter the market in the United States, it was a Philips. I think they were trying to swing back to the original naming. So I don't know if they called it a Magnavox, but it was a Philips television. It was a flat LCD television. It was not super thin, so it was still kind of bulky, and it was $15,000. Totally insane, but it was the first one. So that was from our group, although I had nothing to do with that. I joined a little bit after that became available in the marketplace. But anyway, so Cebu, Software and Electronics, the person that hired me was basically looking for friendly people to go on this little adventure. So the first 4 people were him, me, one of the senior software engineers from Supermac, which was my first job where the three of us all met each other. And then a person who had worked at UMax who joined in as the sort of office manager slash main anchor person that would basically make everything happen, basically. So that was the four of us. And then along the way, hey, do you know anybody? He wanted to hire people who knew each other, who would kind of deal with the silliness of a company, a global company like Philips, and their complete lack of awareness of how the startup culture of Vegas. That is not the same at all. How the startup culture of Silicon Valley would interact with such a legacy, big, lumbering company such as Philips. So everybody knew each other. There, I think, there in the first year, the first 6 months, certainly everybody knew each other that joined in, and then there were a couple people that joined in that were not direct, previous colleagues and whatnot. Anyway, the point of this story is most of us knew each other. So at the time, someone I was seeing was still in college, I think, or just out of college. I mean, she did not enter college at 18. She was from another country. So she was just getting out of school, wanted to get into the finance side of the world. And so, oh yeah, she can be an intern in our group, a paid intern. So he had her copying she still worked with the finance people, but she also did some sort of like errands and sort of like an assistant to our office manager, kind of. So our whole group was functioning as a startup within a big company, that story. So anyway, he at some point gives her a slide deck to photocopy for distribution, I guess. And it mentioned explicitly cheap, in all capitals, cheap interns as one of the elements that they could use to accomplish things in a financially responsible way, I guess. Anyway, so she saw cheap interns and she felt bad about it. So I said, yeah, you can't, you kind of have to couch that a certain way if you're going to, like, here, go photocopy this. It's going to be insulting to you. And he did not get it because he was like that. So I said, look, perception is reality. Even if you didn't mean it, when you show someone these words with no other context or no explanation or no follow-up of any kind, and, granted, she should also have said, hey, what is this? But, so they both were talking to me. But I said, perception is reality, because the way people see things is without additional information or specific details, the way that they will understand them. And then in the modern world, people just talk about their perception as though it were actually reality. So it's something that I've always been sort of concerned about, hence the title of today's episode. So the summary that I've written ahead of time, and then we'll get to the outline is very Spartan. But the summary I wrote: social media, content creation, influencers, new media, independent journalists. It is all about perception and directing it, apparently, and some other stuff. So once you have your perception, you got to create some content. You got to create some social media, especially if you're monetizing. So, which I do not. I do not monetize my productions. But you got to get something out there. And even if the story, so-called story, changes in 24 hours, yeah, that's good for like 2 or 3 postings, content chunks that can be posted to YouTube or YouTube Shorts or TikTok or Instagram or whatever, all of them. Like, ooh, something happened. I got to get my version of the story or what I've heard or seen. Ooh, somebody posted something. I got to post a reaction video. Ooh, there's been a new piece of news. I got to update that, and I got to post something new. And then so there's like this continuous machine of posting, regardless of whether the story is complete. So a little nugget of information has become available. Oh, I better post a 30-minute video. And by the way, I'm also seeing this with people will write 500 words, maybe 300 to 500 words on a 10-second video clip on a TikTok snippet or a short or something. They'll put an interesting headline to get some attention. It's essentially a longer article about a clip of video or an Instagram post where they, the words of the post, the initial caption, are actually the story. So somebody says, I got nothing better going on. Let me post this, and then I'll write my interpretation of it. So it's just content for the sake of content. And even this C word, I remember when the internet was first becoming a thing. I worked at Netscape in 1993. So that was not the initial part of the internet, but when I moved to Silicon Valley, no, I'm sorry, I worked there in 96. 93, when I moved to Silicon Valley, the Mosaic web browser was just coming on the scene. So I had been exposed to the old internet when I was in college. The new internet was more visual, URLs and domain names were just becoming something that you would share with people, or hey, check this out or whatever. So there was still, Mosaic could still use Gopher URLs way back when. A news client was part of the browser back then. So it was the early days. And in those days, I remember using the word content. Oh, it's good for content. And a friend of mine from college, so I think he was still in grad school, said, did you just say content? Like this super generic term. It basically sanitizes the notion of creativity into some bits that can be streamed or shared with someone, downloaded, displayed, nowadays copied and trained into some model data. But yeah, content is this totally sterile feeling thing. Oh, I created some content. Got to get some content. Got to make some content. So it's pretty awful. But that's what everybody's doing, including me, I suppose, because here we are. So yeah, everybody's in a rush to add more opinion, though so often uninformed or malformed, or sometimes, what is the other one? Malinformation is like destructive information that's published on purpose, but malformed, I don't know if that's the same exact meaning. Like you're not forming your opinion to do damage or to misinform. So there's misinformed, disinformed, and malinformed. So misinformed, oops, I got it wrong. Disinformed is like misdirection, except it's disdirection. And then malformed. So either way, if you're publishing information, either you don't know what you're talking about, but you want to publish something, you do know what you're talking about, but you want to continue a narrative, even if it might not be real, or you know what you're talking about, and you definitely want to misinform or disinform with the intent to do some sort of harm, like to damage a campaign, to damage a product or a competitor, to make people not want to purchase or conduct business with or purchase products from or vote for, et cetera, et cetera. So there's all sorts of motivations, I suppose. But it is not only how you perceive something, so you want to publish, monetize or affect opinion, propaganda, right? Or you are perceiving these publications, so it is altering your perception of how things may possibly be. So, and this bothers me. Perception is reality, right? So once you've started hearing, especially when you hear it over and over again, repetition becomes truth. So I find this difficult to, I'm not going to say support, but it's unsavory many times. So the thing that sort of tipped me into like, this is really getting on my nerves, and I got to create some content is no. And as I said, this program does not have a release schedule, but I said, this has been a while since and there've been things through the week that I just don't write down because I'm dumb. So every once in a while I'll say, I should put this this is something I would like to publish. And by the way, this program, because it has no agenda, it has no schedule, I really just go whenever I want, whenever I feel something I want to get out there. But these are just receipts, really, so I can later say, this is what I thought at that time, if you're curious. And it's to practice. I've found that writing my shows for every day through the week. So I write 4 shows a week. Monday is the Buy Me an Update. So that's not, but that's not really a show. It's just a summary. So it's an outline, so I don't forget anything, but it's literally 5 minutes or less. That's the nature of it. So I'm not really counting that, but I write 4 complete episodes. Let's Innovate for Vegas for our nonprofit. Quaggling Sand is personal stories. FFS Talk is supposedly going to be discussions and debates around particular topics, what works, what doesn't, and what we can do about it. I like to think I'm planting seeds for future discussion. And then Cafe Genius Impresarios is about our entrepreneurial innovation ecosystem in the greater Vegas area. So it's a little bit more about economics and startups and whatnot. The entire notion, though, is that I can always point back in time and say, hey, yeah, this is where I was back then for reference. And so writing a show every day almost is good for your mental acuity. Keep it flexible. But yeah, this program is really just about that. Essentially, I'd like to write less and be more sort of spontaneous, as I said at the top of the show. So the outline might be useful if there's a couple of things I want to cover, but I'm trying to write less and less of the show ahead of time, so I'm just more speaking. And of course, I want to keep the number of ums down to a minimum. I want to have ideas flowing, so I need to be able to kind of flip through my mental Rolodex. You know what that is? My mental file system, my recollections of things, current events versus my own, I was going to say insights, maybe some insights, my own opinions as they are being twiddled with by mass media, new media, whatever I'm consuming. I like to think I have a fairly diverse media diet, but you know, whatever the algorithm tells me, right? So Melania Trump had a press conference the other day. It wasn't really a press conference because there was no questions, but it was standing behind the seal of the president at the podium. Some press people. She got her point out there. And it's kind of funny. People make fun of her pronunciation sometimes. There were a couple of words that out of context would have been confusing, but in context, especially because I believe the printed version was published. The one that everybody caught and everybody is mocking, she said trivial, but she pronounced it tribal. And so people are, what did she say? Tribal? What is it? What? Come on. And everybody makes fun that, oh, she speaks 5 languages. Are any of them English? Haha. Okay. But at the end of the day, Americans do not speak multiple languages. So personally, I've always felt that people who do learn English, they're helping us out because, I didn't learn any Eastern European languages. I don't know any, I don't know French or Spanish I know a little bit of Spanish. I don't speak German, French, Slovakian, Slovenian. I don't speak Lithuanian, and I have some Lithuanian heritage. So I don't speak Italian, and I'm half Italian. So anyone who speaks my language, they've kind of gone above and beyond where I went. So it's difficult for me to make fun of people for their pronunciation. In that case, that's been a truth for as long as I can remember. So personally, I think that's sort of cheap shots. It's like making fun of somebody's hair or their things. You could change your hair, I guess, but if you spend time mocking someone's appearance or the way they speak, not what they say, but how, the accent, or I think that's sort of diminishes your argument, whatever it is. So she made her statements, and the question about why she was speaking about, I didn't know Jeffrey Epstein, whatever. So all that. But the things people have been saying, this is true of Brian Noem. I didn't put that in my notes, but we'll get to that in a second, perhaps. They'll say, well, they certainly have an unusual marriage. They don't live in the same house. And I'm like, yeah, I don't know. I think people they make their own perception-based judgments like, oh, they're not like me, therefore I'm going to identify those differences. I'm going to make hay around them. So if you're married, I'm not married, but if you're married and you and your partner have a schedule such that you don't always live in the same house, or maybe you never live in the same house, maybe you sleep in separate bedrooms. I know some people like to do that because they sleep better. One snores, one doesn't. Temperature differences. Maybe there's someone who moves around a lot and it upsets it. Whatever it is, why is it the business of other people? By the way, I'm not a Trump supporter. Don't even go down that road. But just from a generic sense, this person made a statement. The content of the presentation is strange, but people choose to then jump in with like, oh, they don't have a traditional marriage. They don't really live together. They each do their own thing. And you're like, okay, that's fine. Nobody elected her to be the first lady, and that's been true through history. So you get certain powers for free, if you will, free in air quotes, in exchange for being under the magnifying glass. So I'm like, the content of what she said was troubling enough. But yeah, the comments about marriage and so on. Of course, the obvious one lately has been Erica Kirk. I was not a Charlie Kirk fan by any means, and there's a whole bunch of weird stuff there. But then you get well, she's not grieving like a widow should, and all these things. So, and then the Brian Nome situation. I'm only laughing because it works both ways, right? So his wife, Christy Nome, a very problematic person, a variety of things to condemn, on which to base disdain, right? I'm not a fan at all. Her husband may have his own unique takes on life, but because someone decided to out him, I guess it was one of the people he was chatting with online, that's always a danger, I suppose. If you're going to be a known person, you're going to be subject to some form of doxing. So, now that Christy Nome has been fired, which is a good thing generally, and everybody knows about her ongoing relationship with, what's his name, Corey Lewandowski. Okay. Maybe that's a problem because Lewandowski was also overly involved, perhaps, in the functioning of the government in the part she was overseeing, so, DHS and whatnot. So that's relevant. Her husband was at a hearing, sitting behind her. Okay, barely relevant. He was there, possibly showing support, I suppose. But then to delve into their personal life, where it is not necessarily related to the work she was doing as a government employee, to me seems excessive, and it was opportunistic for the person, I don't know if it's OnlyFans or whatever, to actually publish photos and details of discussions and so on. Not that confidentiality doesn't exist anymore. But I just thought, that seems dirty pool, perhaps. This person already has to contend with the fact that his wife has taken his last name, I guess, is not someone that everybody likes. So he has now been drawn into this, whether he cares or not. I'm not trying to render an opinion on his behalf, but to me, it just seems odd that people are judging him. They're making fun of him. They're overly focusing on one of the photos that was published about him and some of his interests, and then some quotes that were published. So Erica Kirk, some images of her unusual facial expressions, her mourning behavior, whether it's up to snuff with various people. You're not mourning hard enough, I guess. And I don't care. I have no idea. I've never lost a spouse. Certainly not one that was lost via gunshot, apparently, to be seen by everyone in almost real time. That's not something that most people can identify with. So who knows? All kinds of perception, all kinds of YouTubers jumping on that, creating entire channels. So that's just ongoing. So Melania, Erica, Brian Nome, the list goes on. There are countless famous people. There are accusations. There's finger pointing. It might not be relationships. It might not be marriages, but it might be other business relationships. There's been some recent news coming out about Swalwell in California. There's different, if you want to clip things, you can take things out of context, a little motivated reasoning. There's everybody jumping on Hassan Piker, which that one's insane. A person that's generating if it's 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, I don't even know if that's completely accurate all the time, but let's just say for the sake of argument that he's producing Hassan's fine. I don't really, he has some interesting takes. I do find it interesting that he remains reasonably well informed given the amount of time he spends online creating content, right? So he's on top of things. His opinions are interesting, but I think they're more informed than people give him credit for. Either way, he claims to be a socialist. Okay, fine. He supports the Palestinian people. Thus, he is dubbed an anti-Semite. Now, when the election first went to Trump for 2024, there was this, the left needs a Joe Rogan. So his name was coming up. Oh, Hassan Piker. He's very popular, very political, but also well-liked by a big cross-section, especially young male voters, et cetera, et cetera. Now it's suddenly turning around. So, he said this, this, and this. So and this always happens. You find 3 quotes, 3 things that people won't like, and you hammer on them. And I'm thinking this person's creating 1,000 to 2,000 hours a year of content of him speaking on camera and whatnot. It may be more, maybe less, and this is over the course of several years. But if you're going to take a total of 30 seconds out of thousands of hours of commentary, and some has been interesting, some is vitriolic, some is outright wrong, some of it is misinformed, some of it is ridiculous. But across the board, you're going to pick 3 brief statements, which he has actually said, yeah, I said that. But if you actually consume all the anyway, so the reason I'm saying that is because between Melania and Hassan Piker, those captured the week, the time frame, 1 week. WEEK, not the week, AK. But I find it interesting that people are basing their perceptions of Melania and Hassan on small pieces of background or evidence or commentary or observation. And people will run with that, even though if you actually take the time, I don't sit through Hassan Piker shows. I'm not going to spend 8 hours a day watching his shows. More power to him for doing that. That is his approach. Respect the craft, right? But I'm not sitting through hours and hours, but I've seen enough of his clip shows. People create whole channels of clips and archives and whatnot. So, you'll get an hour, and they kind of streamline it. If I was going to really start to investigate Hassan Piker, I would consume more of his content, or I would actually try to talk. I would talk. I would try to talk to him. What was I going to say? I was going to say, try to get on a show or reach out. Try to, if I was a journalist, I'm just some person. So what do I know? But, you got to be able to, if you're going to do reporting, and CNN and what else? I don't know. Yeah, MSNBC, the new MS Now. They've written these scathing articles, and I'm like, I don't really know. I've consumed enough Hassan Piker, and if something weird does happen, I try to look for more takes, more opinions from people who are actually interacting with him more often. And for the most part, he has a position on some things that it's like, yeah, okay, that's not unreasonable. That position, I don't know if I believe completely his take on or his views on socialism and how they would fit into the modern day. But okay, people have said he's a Marxist. I don't really see that. He's also, I think he's by implication supportive of democratic socialism. Is he supportive of social democracy? Who knows? Maybe he's in there somewhere. There's always this rush to label things. So perception of whether it's a marriage, political views, specific opinions on specific events, or there's a whole collection of things. I think we've just gotten out of control with amplification. Anyone, well, certainly in the United States, until further notice, anyone can spin up a channel on something, TikTok, YouTube, and Instagram, publish your own, whatever. Production by a street. If you heard that, a little racer cruising by. Anyone can start publishing whatever they want. And the more following you develop, the more amplification you get. And people can reshare, they can clip, they can duet, whatever these other modes of amplifying certain opinions. Obviously clipping, where you clip out the parts that are context, that's problematic. But I just find it interesting that we are driven more and more. I'm not saying anything new here, driven more and more by perception. And that's how elections are won, right? You just, you make up something that you know people will be captured by. Like, oh, I agree with that perception. I will make that my perception. And so, of course, the overriding thing for the last, was it February 28th? I think it was. February 28th in the United States. I think it was the morning of March 1st. The commencement of the Iran war. The United States and Israel versus Iran. Everybody's got an opinion on that. What is the perception of, this and that, and, the circumstances, the goals, everything's changing every day. How can you say this? And so, and here's something interesting I always find is that on the one hand, especially left-leaning media, but left-leaning anyone who's not a fan of Trump, and that apparently is a growing population. And I'm not a fan of Trump, so I'm already on that side. However, you're going to have people say he's always lying or misleading or make stuff up, which is a form of lying, but he'll make something up today and it could change tomorrow. I did hear one interesting take that I think is actually worth putting a pin in for down the road. He doesn't seem to have the ability to connect what he said yesterday to what he said today. Now, he has his talking points. He's got the rigged election, Sleepy Joe. So he pins people with nicknames, negative nicknames. He'll refer to numbers that he's made up, but he keeps those in mind. So there's a couple of things that are front of mind for him. But he'll say things based on whatever he heard at the moment, maybe, and then he'll say something different the other day, or the next day. So when you got someone who has been labeled a liar, a fabricator, a confabulator, maybe, if you're going to make arguments based on the deviations down the road, like, oh, he said this today, but 2 weeks ago he said that. Well, you're basing the foundation of your argument on this person may or may not be saying something based on reality, facts, known information. So how can you possibly hold someone accountable? Now, they should be held accountable, of course. Presidents and people with influence and power like that, they should not be given carte blanche to just make stuff up. That's a bigger problem. But, if whatever they said 2 weeks ago was probably for the sake of propaganda, for the sake of making a point, for the sake of throwing somebody else under a bus somewhere, then how can you later say, oh, 2 weeks ago they said this? And of course, one of those little facets is the obliterated, and this was back in June of 2025. We obliterated this. And then, well, maybe he said that, but now you're just highlighting the discontinuous nature of the train of thought that comes out of this person's head. So that's unfortunate. But then everybody that's making comments now, there are a couple of people. I like Ryan Macbeth as a data point. Sometimes he says some things and I'm like, I don't know about that. But maybe he has better context. Maybe he has more direct access to people. There are still stories. There's still documentaries. There's still analysis being performed on not only World War II, not only World War I, but ancient battles through history. There are people who still study these things. So to be able to make a firm conclusion based on the perceptions of incomplete information in a war, quote unquote war, which has not been declared, but a war that is only now, 42 days old, I guess, ish, 40 days old. The details of this entire thing will maybe become clear in a couple of years or clearer. So the way people are perceiving things is then just steering information, awareness, and opinion based on perception, when the factual telling is still most definitely in flux, right? The classic, what did he know and when did he know it? That's the tip of the iceberg. Who told him what and on what basis did his opinion of the day form? And then what happened to change it the next day? And then how is that being portrayed in statements made and social media posts published, hundreds of words at a time? That's, to me, insanity. The list of things is insane. So as we move through our days, our perception of what's happening is shaped more and more by information that is pushed to us, I suppose. Not only directly, not only first order contacts, like, oh, I am following this person on whatever social media platform, blah, but then there's resharing and there's people basing their opinions. And here's something that is, it should be more transparent, but it is not. If say you follow 5 different people, and 5 different people have read a Truth Social post, or they've read some post on X, or seen a YouTube video or whatever, and they are going to give their rendering of their opinion, their perception of what's going on. Now, if you happen to follow, can you hear that? It's my rice cooker. Hopefully it's not going to beep too long. It's good. Yay, rice is done. So if you hear that from 5 different people, or on 5 different YouTube channels or TikTok, whatever it is, so you're going to hear it, but they are all basing their notion on one person, one outlet, one opinion, one, no matter how credible or consequential. You're thinking, oh, everybody's saying the same thing. Well, because they're all basing it on the same fact. So this is why you want to have multiple sources and all that stuff. So perception is being sort of modified to mean how many times I hear the same thing. Repetition is the way you alter opinions. So that should be a huge concern to people, but instead we just have the echo chamber and whatever comes from it. So that's something I'm actually mildly concerned about now. I don't really consume content from X. I barely Blue Sky, meh. So I've really gone completely into federated content, federated platforms. So people want to share stuff, they should own their own platform, or they should have the opportunity to. Not a fan anymore of X and CNN even, and TikTok, of course. I've never really been a fan of TikTok. So I think perception is going to be a problem. I say on the 1,000th day of perception being a problem, probably thousands more than the 1,000. So I just wanted to share that. I think these are, if you're going to be judged by the way people perceive how your family functions, right? Hey, I don't like you because your parent or your uncle or someone who you were affiliated with sometime, you knew them. And this is, of course, the Epstein files are a huge problem here. You were mentioned in the Epstein files. Okay. I was not, as far as I know. But if you were in there, you are suddenly suspect. And of course, the nature of those files is so vast that you, what was it? Kara Swisher was mentioned in the Epstein files because of some news coverage of something. So they mentioned her by name because she was she had a byline on some sort of something somewhere. So yes, you're mentioned, but because of adjacency through a media publication of some sort. So there's a full range, and context is critical. But of course, if you just say, and here was another one, I think it might have been Rokana, who at some point when the first tranche was published, like, oh, I searched, Donald Trump is mentioned 1 million times. Again, not a Trump fan, but let's keep it in the reality realm. So later he came out, he was at a microphone somewhere and said, I only searched for the word Donald. So there was 1 million results, but not all of them were Donald Trump. Okay. So I think somebody else said that he is mentioned explicitly 38,000 times. So all these numbers are based on hearsay, perception, or repeating somebody else's perception. So even, and I think it was Rokana, made a flip statement initially because they had to go and search through the full quote unquote unredacted documents at the Department of Justice. He made this observation, but later corrected or adjusted it or walked it back. Like, oh, I only searched for one word. Oh, I looked for the word John and it came up 12 million times. So that must be John Smith, right? So I think that was hugely problematic. But without any context, without any sort of reference information, without multiple sourcing, it is all too easy to have the amplification of content creators in the so-called new media take something and run with it. And then everyone else that reacts to or refers to or amplifies again, you're going to end up with this rocket launching based on bad information and just making it worse and worse faster than anyone can. The truth, what is it? Lies circle the globe while truth is putting its pants or boots or whatever on. Yeah, exciting stories travel very quickly. What else? Everything is marketing. Everything. I live in Greater Vegas. Everybody's talking about how, March? No, February. February had an upturn in tourism, 2% more than February last year, which was down from the February before that. But okay, we're getting back on track. Vegas is making a comeback. You're like, are you kidding? The full impact of our economic chaos is not being felt. And anyone who comes to Vegas for tourism, for the fun economy, that is a trademarked term. The trademark is held by the UNLV Office of Economic Development, in fact. Where are their attentions focused? So if you're going to come to Vegas for the fun economy, gambling, professional sports, entertainment, plain old tourism, conventions. If you're here for a convention and then you want to take part in some gaming, that's 2 checkbox. You're going to come here for the Super Bowl. You're going to come here for Formula One. Okay, professional sports. While you're here, you're going to take in a show, entertainment, right? So everybody comes here for that. But there's been a documented shift towards what they call higher value customers, higher value visitors, tourists. So people with more money to spend, even though that population is smaller. So who thinks things are improving? Is it the people because their hours are cut, because there are fewer people coming? Do they think, oh, okay, good, we have more tourists? Or is it people who capitalize on the so-called higher value customer? Or is it people with businesses that are impacted by the reduced wages available for people to spend locally because they live here locally? So the perception of what Vegas is and what it's trying to be and so on has direct implications on those of us who live here. And then there's the story that is told and the marketing message and so on. The Las Vegas Convention and Visitors Authority will underscore certain things, promote certain things. The nature of entrepreneurialism in Vegas is something I spend a lot of time focused on since I'm one of those entrepreneur type people. So you look at what the story is that they tell people, and then there's the way things really are. That's totally different. Once again, perception, reality, different. So there's tons and tons of stuff in this under this umbrella of like, what does it seem to be and what is it actually? So I think, that will certainly be conversation into the future as well. Coming up in 45 minutes, you can already hear. So I've mentioned this a long time ago. I have that nasal fresh thing. I think I have an affiliate link on my profile page. Don't forget, you can always find all the links to all of my programs on the buymeacoffee.com/Dan Hugo profile page. You already know that this particular show is published on Ko-fi.com, ko-fi.com/Dan Hugo. If you found this on that platform in the posts section, congratulations. You're probably in a small minority. But otherwise, it's published as a normal podcast in the usual places, the usual methods, RSS feeds and everything. So yeah, don't forget though, if you want to find all of my various stuff, buymeacoffee.com/Dan Hugo. There's some affiliate links. There's links to various ways of finding each of the programs, which I've mentioned during this episode specifically. So yeah, check those out if you want to. You don't have to spend any money. You don't have to buy me a coffee. You don't have to click on the affiliate links that are there. The other links to the YouTube channels for each of the programs, the home pages, the Spotify for creators, profile page, all that stuff is direct links. So there's no redirection from a counter site or anything. So just have at it. And then I don't really do this for the money. Like I said, it's really because if I was not good, but instead I'm doing it just to get the word out. I'm trying to practice. I always practice. Writing episodes is itself worthy. So just the exercise of writing, committing your thoughts to the printed word, the written word in the form of my outlines, and then speaking them. For the most part, I read what I've written and then I inject my own commentary along the way. So it's like probably sometimes it's 80-20, sometimes it's 50-50. If I've not written a script like today, I literally wrote 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I'm going to say 35 words. I'll spare you the counting exercise. In the outline, right? It's 4 bullets. One of them is I'll close on, the fourth one, which is usually anything else, like I said. And then I remembered, oh, that's right. So April 20th will be 1 year since I published the first episode of this audio program, which was at the time exclusively on Ko-fi.com, hence the name. It's a solo show by implication and by title, which is the title is the implication. At some point, I started publishing it also via the usual pathways, the usual podcast publication platforms and so on. So, but yeah, so we're coming up on a full year. So the end of season 0 is nigh. And so season 1 shall commence. So I'm trying to think of if I want to change up on anything or, yeah, we'll see. But yeah, we're coming up on a year. So that's kind of cool. I've done, what are we on? Season 2. Buy Me an Update, on Buy Me a Coffee is still in season 1. So it's episode 72 was published last week. So not bad. Some other programs have been around for longer. Cafe Genius is in season 3. So I do start at season 0. So that's 4 seasons. So yeah, we're coming along. I think it's interesting. So I'm trying to be consistent, except for this program, which is by design inconsistent, but keep making it happen, keeping it going. So yeah, hopefully if you are subscribed to this in some way, wherever you find your audio programs, thank you for that. And otherwise, hopefully this was interesting to you and you are motivated to check out the other stuff I'm working on. So I mentioned the nasal fresh thing, and I'll close on that. So my sinuses go nuts in Vegas. And I do have an affiliate link on buymeacoffee.com/Dan Hugo. Nasal Fresh is cool if you have sinus issues. Their advertising is a little weird. Yeah, I haven't seen one of their ads in forever. I don't even know if they're still in business. I should check out my affiliate link. But the thing, I want to do. Before I mention the affiliate link, let me see if it's still there. Cash App, Google Fi, Reef, Atlas, hey, where's my Cash App? My thing, do I not have? Oh, I guess I don't. Oh, there it is. Yeah, okay. I have an Amazon affiliate link, so the product is still available on Amazon. So it's even cheaper. Nice. So I haven't been using it consistently at all. And I've been trying to see if can I get away with Sudafed or Sufadrine, which I use frequently. The answer is no. So the last time I used it was probably 3 weeks ago, maybe. But I'm going to try to do it. When I first got it, I was doing it twice a day, morning, night. And that was overkill, I think. But I do need to find out. What is this? That's broken. I do need to find out what's going on with my sinuses and how effective nasal fresh is with there you go, more consistent usage. Not twice a day, once a day should be fine. But I need to revisit that because allergy season is upon us here in Vegas and it's going to kill me. So I'm going to do that. So the next episode of this audio program that you hear will probably be the final one for season 0, which we're in. So that's sometime within the 9 days, hence. And then we'll kick off season 1. But hopefully the next episode I do will be a few days of nasal fresh goodness. And we'll see if that's an effective way. Because you can hear my voice is not great at the moment. So that's where we're going to leave it. Thank you for listening as always. And we'll catch you next time. Thank you. And hear you around. Bye-bye.